wanting feels in a way very good, but it also has this sense of at the end of it, once I get the thing I really want, I'll finally be relieved. And so the wanting has more momentum if we do not focus on our values. Our life is full, certainly, but we do not actually have the things that are the most important to us at the core of our experience. And all the little stuff, making sure our inbox is empty or making all these little details end up being taking up all of our time and all of our attention. Do values change? Absolutely. Values 100% change, and that's why we're always actually evaluating our values themselves. Do these values fit? The theme we're going to be looking at today is how to choose a life path, and we're going to be looking at values and how they play into that. There's always this sense of, I need to choose this giant life path, and how do I pick what I want to do, this kind of thing. But if we actually get clear on what our needs are, what our values are, based on that, we can actually shape a life sort of piece by piece, like water on a stone, rather than having to hammer away at something to make it the thing we want, not really knowing what we necessarily want. So the first thing to talk about is, why would we need to even do this in the first place? Why not just sort of be free, live our lives, do whatever we want? Well, we have to consider that wanting is a drive. The classic thing I always joke about is like, I want the new phone or the new gadget. And this is just a common thing. We see advertising. Advertising is based on trying to get us to want a thing by using someone else's desire. We see someone else's desire, our system sort of takes over. Oh, that person's enjoying that hamburger. It makes us desire. But we have to remember, wanting is a drive. It is a natural, normal human drive. Early Buddhism says, let's uproot that, let's get rid of it. Later Buddhism says, let's transmute that into something transcendent. Latest stage Buddhism, 1,000 years ago, might say, it's already awake. You can actually find everything you need in the craving itself. So craving is, from my perspective, is not our enemy. It shows us something very powerful about the nature of existing. There's a story that I tell that my sister hates that I tell this story. When I was visiting my sister and my nieces and nephews, they were little kids, so I don't fault them. I'm pre-apologizing to my sister. So it's Christmas time, there's presents everywhere. The kids are like totally amped. So they're going through, taking their turns, opening presents, etc. And then finally at the end, the kids say, okay, can we have another gift? And the parents are like, okay, that's it. Those are all the gifts that we have. And the kids are like, no, we want more. And that thrill of wanting was driving the whole process. I think everybody identifies. It's like, this is so much fun. I want this thing so much. And the wanting feels in a way very good, but it also has this sense of at the end of it, once I get the thing I really want, I'll finally be relieved. And so the wanting has more momentum, but it can't be satisfied. So this a friend of mine, a monk, who's also a teacher, Soryu for all, he has a quote, which I remember he said, that wanting doesn't care if we're happy. It just wants. Which I love that quote. So what we have to look at is that we have a potential to be happy and fulfilled. However, our drives within us don't necessarily care. All of the drives within us have one primary purpose, that is to pass genetic material forward. What if we want something very different than just passing genetic material forward? What if we actually want to feel fulfilled? What do we do then? Well, in that case, we actually have to sort of hotwire the system in a way that will be most likely to give us that fulfillment. And the way that we hotwire that system is through meditation and contemplation and nurture positive practices like the one we did today. Cultivate those aspects of those drives that will be most likely to make us fulfilled. We could say generically there could be some values, but what about me specifically? What for me would make me feel fulfilled? Well, for that, I typically recommend that people get very, very clear on what their personal values are. What I typically will do is say, one word with a sentence that defines them. Make 10 of those. I have an exercise for that. I'll put the link right down below, but you can also just go right to our website, which is deepmindfulness.io/tools. And there's a values exercise there. It's the first thing that I do with any student that I work with, along with the 15 essential meditations, which are probably also linked right below. Getting clear on your values, breaking it down to 10. It's kind of an arbitrary number, but it's a good number to just keep it to. because a lot of people's difficulties are based on mismanaged or either they do not focus on their values or they misorganize their values. There's this classic thing, which I think comes from Dale Carnegie, this guy who just talked about, how to be a good person. Classic, be a good person, dude. And he has this metaphor. Imagine you have a big jar and you have some material next to it, and you need to put the material into the jar. There are 3 materials. There are golf balls, there is marbles, and there's sand. So the first person comes up and is like, oh, this is pretty straightforward. They pour the sand into the jar, and the jar fills up X amount, and they take the marbles and they pour those into the jar, and then they go to try to put the, golf balls. They don't really fit because the jar is effectively full. The next person comes along and says, well, let me try this a little bit differently. They go and they put the golf balls in the jar. Those fit fine. They put the marbles in the jar. Give a little shake. Those fit fine. They put the sand in the jar, and it goes in and fills all the little spaces in between. Well, now the little details are now spread out and organized around the bigger details. And so they fit. Everything can fit into the jar. This is a beautiful physical metaphor because this is exactly how values work. If we do not focus on our values, our life is full, certainly, but we do not actually have the things that are the most important to us at the core of our experience, and all the little stuff, making sure our inbox is empty or making all these little details end up being taking up all of our time and all of our attention. The places where there's conflict, okay, I really want success, but I also want a lot of time with my family. Well, there's a little bit of a conflict there. So you're going to have to attend to how do you create that balance in your life, right? That's going to be a place where you're going to need to put a little extra attention. Once you get your values, you want to start making decisions based on those values, even small decisions. What do you want to do today? That's a pretty obvious decision. What do you want to, you have a decision to make it work. Do I stay at this job? Do I leave this job? What kind of meditation do I want to focus on? As many decisions as we can make, small ones and eventually big ones. But doing it in small places is actually really, really helpful. The final story that I want to tell is about somebody I helped. There's a friend who I was helping coach along with another friend who wanted to put on a off-Broadway production, really wanted to do this and was like, this is something I want. I was like, great. Let's talk about why. This is another great thing. If you know what you want, just look at why. Why do you want that? After working with him on the values for a while, he said, I want to connect with people. I want to show people my acting, chops. I really love acting. I want to share this art form with people. And I want to have the live interaction with these people so we really can work and connect and have that feeling. Those things together would make me feel very fulfilled. When we started the conversation, it was very technical. Okay, if I want this to do an off-Broadway thing, it's like a lot of work, and how do I raise the money, and how do I, By the end of it, he's like, these are the things that I want. And me and the person next to him sort of looked at each other and we're like, why don't you go do a monologue or a piece in the park? Immediately, like today. Instead of this thing that is like, potentially going to take, years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. You can have the thing you want right now. It just doesn't look like this particular shape that we're thinking of it in. Making an effort to make decisions based on these values and shaping our practice and shaping the way we relate to the world in terms of our values is the most likely thing to bring us towards fulfillment. Do values change? Absolutely. Values 100% change, and that's why we're always actually evaluating our values themselves. Do these values fit? But this is something that is an ongoing process. This is not something that we do once and then it disappears. Our values are the parts of us that have various drives without their pain, without their suffering. So as we shed that pain and suffering, as we sort of move through that material, our values will absolutely change 100%. We'll get so much clearer, like, I don't like this. I'm not available for this kind of experience. And that is how we shape a life that's more and more fulfilling over time. We want to look at every drive within us as wholesome in its nature, not necessarily in its execution, but in its nature. So let's look at some of the examples. Money is an easier one. People want money for different reasons. One person might want money because they want security. In our society, security is a much more acceptable sort of drive. Someone else wants money because they want to look flashy and they want to be seen by people. If somebody wants that sense of being looked at as important, being the center of attention. We actually do prize that in many aspects of our society, but we do that through, praising people who are very talented. And we're like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, sure. We'll all look at you. We don't mind that. But we typically, if somebody's just like, I just want you to look at me, we're like, well, that's a little weird. We always want to assume that any drive within us, that the root of it is wholesome. It's the execution that could be problematic. An example of this that I often will say is like, someone says, I want to feel excited, I want to feel a spiritual connection, and I want to have lots of energy. Okay, those are all fine values. And it's like, so therefore I'm going to try crack cocaine. It's like, no. Everything was good up until that execution point. Ultimately, though, if those drives are met, then the likelihood that they'll be seeking those in these horribly violent ways goes down dramatically. We have to recognize that there is something about that is wholesome, and the execution itself is not going to work. What would be great is if in this very moment you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and go ahead and have yourself a lovely day.